Welcome. Glad to have you here. This is our second webinar in our series of recession-proofing your business. And today we're going to be talking about talent. Now, when I work with clients, talent is one of the number one things that they're always talking about, the need for new talent. For talent that's highly skilled in today's technologies, the talent for decision making in today's economy, the way it actually works and the way the processes have to be adjusted, as well as talent at the executive level. Who's agile enough to be able to transform businesses, to be able to move them ahead in a competitive way, to compete because we are in a global economy, all that's changing rapidly. Well, that question about talent, that's the one that we're going to be talking about today. And that's the one by the end of this webinar, you're going to be able to take away tools and techniques that you can implement immediately and start being the talent magnet that you can be. How's that? So the question is, if we're trying to find talent, is everyone else, or are we just really exaggerating how bad everything is? Well, the conference board just a few months ago came out with some research, and they said that attracting and retaining talent is the number one internal organizational concern of CEOs globally. So not just here. In fact, Europe CEOs are even more concerned than those in the US. The US also shares that top concern with cybersecurity. But you'll see that now it's not just like when we were had a nursing shortage here in the US and we could go out to the Philippines and hire in nurses, because everyone's looking for those nurses or whatever talent it is that you're trying to find. How do we differentiate ourselves as businesses, and how do we enact that change that's necessary as business owners? Well, let's take a look and see how much we really do have to care yet, because while the business or the conference board was looking at this, were they really just talking to those big global concerns? Do I, as a smaller or mid-sized business, have to worry about it? And as a global concern, if I'm a leader, can I just train the talent? Do I have time? Well, again, we're looking at PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers, and they're saying that the CEOs in Japan, Central and Eastern Europe, they're the most worried, which is interesting because with all of the changes and all of the talent needed in technology, Japan being one of the tech powerhouses, the fact that they're worried, well, that sort of makes me a bit worried too then, right, as a CEO. 95% and 85% respectively are naming some type of technology skill that they need as a concern and that they're not being able to find easily. And there is actually a panic within Japan because it doesn't have enough experts in artificial intelligence. And as you look at the software, anyone who does a Google search, artificial intelligence is at play. Now we're starting to use it for our forecasting, for some of the ways we actually run some of the basic pieces of our business in order to gather not only the input and data about customers, but actually to be able to satisfy those customers when they order services and products from us. And then finally, Gartner came out and said 43%, only 43% of US workers expressed a high intent to stay with their current employers. So not only can we not find them, but we're having troubles figuring out how in the world to keep them once we do find them and hire them. Again, that's what we're going to be dealing with today in this webinar. And we're excited that you're here because at the end, we're going to be giving you thank you bonuses for staying with us and going through and learning these new techniques, the techniques that the people who are looking to hire into your company, they're expecting you to be able to match. So you're saying, but what if I just buy more automation? Won't I be fine at that point in time? Isn't that the solution to everything? Because we're looking at tech's sort of causing this problem. So if I ban more of it, won't it solve it? Well, the answer is no. No, because talent is right now in the driver's seat. Technology by itself is not going to solve this problem. In fact, what do you hear most of the time about hiring? Well, no one can make it through the automated filters. Somehow there's got to be a better way. We've got to take the processes that we've been using for generations now in hiring and modernize them to meet the new demands in the way we're running our businesses. So we need an unconventional paradigm to attract talent. And that attraction, that paradigm, that way of changing your mindset. Our guest speaker today, who I'm very excited to introduce to you in just a minute, he's going to be covering that because it does work and it does match what people are looking for and it differentiates you. But that's not enough. You can have all the mindset changes in the world that you want. You need to have a plan to put it into action. There has to be commonality between the job seekers and how they're looking, the values that they're bringing, as well as the decision makers and HR on the employer side and what they're showcasing. And finally, once you get the people in, we have to have some sort of continuity. And luckily, the methods and techniques that you're going to learn in today's webinar start to create the basic foundational pieces for that long-term life of your talent, staying with your business, not being part of that 43%. I'm Dr. Cynthia Kalina-Kaminsky, and I am president of Process and Strategy Solutions. I help companies of all sizes, and I work mainly with the C-level teams and then pulling the performance aspects that we create strategy around into the rest of the companies. And as such, we need Lego blocks because you know that this big grand strategy development that we used to use isn't flexible and agile enough. So I am one of 4 people who help put the Lego blocks together in customized ways that differentiates you from your competitors who it looks like on the surface level may be exactly like you, but really aren't. And for those who want more flexibility in the time that they actually work on this, I do have the consulting captured in a digital course. It's called Performance Magic, and you can find it at essentialbusinessperformance.com. But none of this works if you don't have the correct talent. So again, we're back to the problems that we started with, and that's where our expert, Mr. Dominic Militello, comes in. He is the president of Job Search Gurus, and he has a very interesting path that led him to the solution sets that you're going to learn today, or at least the amount that we can fit into just a 1-hour piece. While he's currently a National Career Development Association member, he wasn't always one. He wasn't always in the job search and executive coaching area. He started as a professional athlete and had to figure out how in the world to transition into the commercial space. Well, the language is totally different. Yes, we use sports analogies all the time, but I can use all the sports analogies I want, and I'm not going to hit a home run in the World Series. So there's something different that has to happen there. It's the skill sets, it's the mindset, it's the everything else. And because he's been through this as well as worked with executive search firms and saw the angst on both sides of this equation and said, you know, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a way to match the modernization that's going on in business today with how we're going about seeking our talent. And he's developed that. And that's why I'm so excited for you to see it today. He's given his email here so that you can contact him later. I'll show it a bit later toward the end. So again, you can have a conversation with him about how to modernize this, one of the most critical processes that we have in our business today. I'd also like to thank Flackery. They are our partner. They are up here in the New Hampshire area, and they help small, mid-size, and large businesses understand what's going on in the area, what other people are doing, so that you can see how other businesses are coping with what's going on as the world changes and as what you do changes, because customers expect so much more out of us. By this point, you're probably breathing in a huge sigh and saying, well, great, we don't have deep pockets like these huge global companies. So how in the world can we attract needed talent? You just showed us through all these specs that everyone's looking for the same talent I'm looking for. Not really. Not everyone wants to be in a startup. Not everyone wants to be in a large global company. Not everyone wants to be in a fast-moving mid-cap. The thing that you have to be able to do is explain your value, explain what it is that's really going on, and you will attract the correct talent. But I'm not the expert in this part. Dominic is, and he's going to take it from here.
Awesome. Thank you, Cynthia. It's so exciting to be here. And thank you for all you're doing and your partners are doing the webinar series. It's fantastic, first of all. So excited to be here. The intro, the setup, the statistics, you're just hitting it just spot on. So I'm excited to share what we do with our client candidates, understanding both sides of the table. And so really this is what we're trying to do, bridging that gap between decision makers and top talent. So again, thank you for having me. As you can see, I'm sitting in a hotel room. I'm in Detroit, Michigan this weekend, visiting with the University of Michigan. Going to hit the University of Michigan versus Notre Dame game later on tomorrow evening. And so we're sitting here and just excited to be here. And thank you again for having me. But really the process or the objective of what we're trying to do is bridge this gap, because there is a global challenge to bring decision makers and top talent together in a more formalized way, in a more updated way than what has been going on in the past. There, the whole job search issue is just, in my opinion, it's just broken. It's broken from both sides of the table. If you're a small business owner, if you're a director of a nonprofit, if you're somebody in HR for a large corporation, you're just kind of lost in this, well, can be lost in this just overwhelming stack of resumes and job postings and getting the right person. And there's so much going on. We just decided to take a different look, take a different approach, look at this situation from a different perspective. And for my own challenges, as you mentioned in the intro, being a former professional athlete, and going into being a father and a great employee and all that, man, getting to the highest level of professional athletics was relatively easy compared to all this other stuff. I almost lost my family, my friends, my financial situation because of this challenge I was faced with of trying to find a new job and trying to maintain a job. And it was all the struggle and strife and the challenges I was faced with that allowed me to come up with some of these new cutting edge strategies that I want to share with you today. So the perspective I want to share with your audience today, Cynthia, is looking at this job search process from the client candidate's perspective, understanding decision makers have a big role, but I want to share with your audience what we're talking to our client candidates about, how to go about this process maybe from a different perspective. And the way we do that, we start out sharing with our client candidates the job creation model. And what that looks like is, if we go from left to right on the screen here, generally what happens is some sort of problem, some sort of challenge has hit an organization. And once they have identified that, well, they recognize it. A lot of companies don't recognize it. We've all been in companies and organizations where there's some problem or challenge. They need to add a new seat or get rid of somebody or bring somebody in to get different results. Sometimes companies don't recognize it, but once they do recognize it, they'll put an action plan together. Generally, again, it's either a new posting, maybe creating a position, restructuring something. Most companies are going to look inside the organization to fill that position or that new situation. If they can't find anybody, then they'll ask the company, who do you guys know that might be a good fit for this situation? They'll network. If they can't find anybody, then they'll send the posting to HR or put it out to the general public. And if they still can't find anybody, then they'll go out and use a recruiter to find that hire. So this is what we want to share with our client candidates first, because generally speaking, most job seekers are spending their time at 5, 6, and 7 on this job creation model. And once they're in that, that's the paradigm. The old paradigm says network, and generally it's ineffective. Then go look at the job boards, look at your postings, send your resume, fill out applications, and then get in touch with some recruiters. But that's about it. After that, when I ask clients, and I've been doing this for 20 years now, when I ask people about what are the 3 or 4 things, or what do you do in the job search process, everybody talks about these last 3 stages. Nobody, I think I've maybe met one person in 20 years that says, well, I might try to talk with some people, and network and all that, but they don't really understand one, two, three, four of this job creation model. So I'm going to stop just real quick and see if you have any questions about this before we go on. But this job creation model is crucial for our client candidates to really understand what's going on and to see the hidden picture or see the whole picture. The hidden job market really is steps 1, 2, 3, 4, and overlapping on step 5 here. So Cynthia, let me just stop real quick and ask you if you have any questions before we go on to the next slide here, because this right here is crucial to the success of our client candidates.
So if someone does have a question, if you, down at the bottom of your screen, there's a ribbon. When you move your cursor down there, you are currently muted. It's the icon on the far left with a red slash in it. Just click on the red slash over the microphone and you'll be able to ask your question. And then once you're done asking, I just ask please to re-click the microphone to have a red slash go back on it, and Dominic will answer it.
Yeah, so if there's any questions, or Cynthia, if you have a question, like I said, fantastic. If not, let's just go to the next slide and talk about the next step in the process.
Okay, we're going to go to the next slide. I do have some questions that have come in, but I'm going to save them for a little later because I think you might be able to hit on some of the answers in just a minute.
Perfect. Excellent. Excellent. So once our client candidates, once they understand that piece of the puzzle, then we're going to go start talking about, okay, now that you know that, we're going to spend the bulk of our time at the beginning of that job creation model. The first thing we want to do and get instilled in our new client candidate is a new mindset. Now, most of the audience here today is going to be really understands the left side of the screen here, right? Decision makers with values, functional fit. These are the questions you want to ask potential new candidates about to make sure they're the right candidate for the position that you're seeking. Values, functional fit, track, level, industry fit, skill set. And if you'll email me at the end, if you want more information on some questions surrounding these fundamentals, then I'll be happy to share those with you. I'm not going to spend time today talking about the left side of the screen here. I want to share with you more along the lines of what we talk to our client candidates about. So this new mindset that we're talking about, Cynthia, really talks about with our clients that we want them to understand this is a brand to brand process. This is not a job seeker to employer process. I have to rewire our client candidates in their thinking initially so they can be effective utilizing the job creation model to their benefit. And part of the first step in that is I want them to understand, I want them to stop sending out resumes, stop looking for a job. Most of the people we work with bring value to the table, right? But they've been socially programmed when you're in the job search process to start sending out resumes, look at the job boards, use recruiters, and generally the feedback I'm getting from them, just about from everybody, is that I'm not getting. I've had one of my clients, for example, a doctor of engineering, 2 master's degree, a bachelor's degree, all the latest in certification and process improvement, and saying, Dominic, I can't get any interviews. I can't generate any kind of activity in the marketplace. What can you do to help me? And so we started talking about it. And what I discovered was, well, not only was he a doctor of engineering and all these education, but he also worked with NASA, helping feed the international astronauts on the International Space Station. And so I'm thinking, I mean, my goodness, why is this gentleman not getting more activity within the job search process? And it was because he was stuck in this job search of sending out resumes and looking for a job. So when we asked him to stop doing that, and I started instilling some new mindsets, some new beliefs in him, then things started to change very quickly. So I wanted him to think this is a brand to brand. He brings tremendous value to the marketplace. It's just a matter of positioning and leveraging what he actually brings to the table and then sharing that to the marketplace. But before we could get there, we had to help him understand there's some beliefs that go along with this process. And one of those beliefs is that great companies need you just as much as you need them, right? Great companies are built with great and top talent. So in other words, in order for them to maintain and continue to be great, they have to attract and keep great talent. Well, you're great talent. So you are as valuable to them as they are to you. And just that one belief alone can get clients really excited about this process. I love this process. I used to just dread it and hate it like most people do. But now, because when you look at it from a different perspective, incorporate some new beliefs, this can be one of the most exciting times in your career. It really can, because you can take ownership of your career. You do not are not bound to the rules, the stigma, the social paradigm of sending resumes and looking at job boards. As a matter of fact, we want you to stop doing that. So now you have a new mindset. You're empowered with how to engage with the marketplace. You have the belief system. Now let's talk about some fundamentals, some foundations. We want our client candidates to start this process without a resume. And in other words, the resume, in my opinion, looks at where you've been and where you're currently, but this is a job search of where you're going. So instead of starting with a resume, we have our clients start with a job offer. I want them to write themselves an offer just the way they would receive it from the marketplace. Exactly. Start date, title, compensation, duties, responsibilities, benefits. Write it exactly the way you'd want to receive it from the marketplace. Isn't that a better way of starting this process than with a resume that talks about where you've been and where you're at? So now that you're armed with a self offer, outlining exactly what you're looking for, now you can take that as your treasure map moving forward for your ideal opportunity. You take that to the marketplace. And sometimes a client will say, well, Dominic, I don't really know what the title will be. I don't really know what the, okay, well then our process begins to fill that out first. We're going to go to the marketplace and ask them to help us fill that job offer out, that self offer out first, before we can engage and share with them our skill set. Hopefully that makes sense, because I know I'm going pretty quick here. I'm passionate. I have so much information I want to share with your audience, but let's just start with that one. So the self offers first. Then we want them to start identifying what their value is. And when I ask somebody, a client, let's just say, for example, Cynthia, that I'm talking to one of my client candidates and I say, okay, well, if I have your ideal job posting on my desk, you have to answer one question in order for me to release this to you. That question is this: why should I hire you over the 5 other highly qualified candidates, right? And most executives can't answer that question effectively enough. They can't separate themselves from their ideal job opportunity, right? So we have to start with this. Here's how I want you to answer that. So most of our client candidates bring value to the table. They just don't know how to share it. So here's the formula that we share with our client candidates to share their value. And that is problem, action, result. Most people have been faced with some sort of challenge, obstacle in their career. Most have put in incredible solutions to solve those problems and have generated tremendous results from those solutions, but they don't know how to share that. So when we give them that problem, action, result statement and say, let's talk about what you've done in the past. Like I was talking to my candidate example earlier, this NASA engineer, I said, well, how many people have you told that you were part of a NASA engineering team that helped feed the astronauts in the International Space Station? He said, well, nobody's ever asked that. And I said, well, okay, well, that's something that you need to start sharing with decision makers, because it demonstrates your value and what you can do as far as solving problems. So start with a self-offer. Come up with value statements, problem, action, results, focusing on the results, quantifiable if possible. Then we want you to start with a vision statement. What does the ideal day look like for you? The ideal job opportunity, the ideal environment, product, services, location. Just write it down. Now we have some tangible things in our possession that we can begin the job search process with. There's other things like having a white paper. Having a white paper in your possession to send out may get you in front of decision makers with some real value. Okay.
So Dominic, I have a question here. I'm the company listening to this, and you've all of a sudden trained this talent to do all this amazing stuff. How in the world do I fit it into my values and functional fit? Because they're off writing white papers and job descriptions and job offers before I even have anything in here, because it's not in this list.
Right.
What do I have to do?
Well, so that's this bridging the gap piece of it, right? So decision makers are seeing now this, hopefully this new wave of talent coming at them with a different set of documents, a different set of mindset, a different belief system coming in and saying, listen, and that's a great question. Just hit my mind is that, millennials are really kind of showing the older group how to go about this, because millennials are not putting up with broken processes, CEOs that are not, standing up and living the values of the organization. So that's a whole nother subject we can talk about some other time. But really, it's about taking ownership on both sides of the table. When top talent takes ownership of their career and starts researching and going to organizations saying, listen, I believe I have something to offer. Decision makers have to be prepared for that. They have to have a process in place in order to capture, maintain, and reach out to this candidates once they're ready. So that's this bridge we're talking about, which is like, we could talk for hours on this, right? But that's what we're talking about. So decision makers have to be ready. This new type of mindset coming at them is really going to start impacting the marketplace, in my opinion.
So would I have to write a value statement that they can see somewhere?
So from the decision makers, they'll
Yes.
help you have, yeah, I mean, obviously your values, that you have for your organization, that's got to be posted, and that's got to be, but you also have to demonstrate how you live those values, how your organization has handled maybe tough customers, tough employees in the past. Because as a candidate, I want to know how you've done that. I want to know how you have dealt with tough customers, tough employees, because I don't want to find myself in a situation where I've just taken a job and now I find myself in an environment that doesn't fit who I am, what I want, and now I'm out job searching again in another 6 months. So yes, an organization must not only post their values, their core values, but they also have to be able to give me an example of how they live those values. And so that's crucially important moving forward.
But what about the skill sets? Because really, here I am, I'm in a company, I'm short on talent, and I just have to have someone fill a gap. And so I'm looking for specific skill sets. And doesn't a resume handle that? Or do I now all of a sudden have to read all these white papers and what do I do?
So that's where we're coming in, and I think the next slide has some of what you're asking here. So let's look at that and see what we have here, because it's absolutely important. So here's some things that you can do right now, right? So from a decision maker, business owner, executive director of maybe a nonprofit, whatnot, we want you to know the exact parameters of the ideal person. Just like I'm asking my client candidates to start this process off with a self offer, I believe decision makers should start with a self offer too. I want them to write out their offer of what that ideal person would look like for them. Because now, instead of just having a job posting that you can vet through the interviewing process, but if you've had an offer already in mind, the ideal person in your mind of who's going to accept that offer, now you're just trying to match that through the interviewing process. We always say in the interviewing process is an opportunity for the company, the organization to kind of vet the candidate, but in the negotiation phase is a chance for the candidate to vet the organization to make sure they're for real. So start with an offer. Just begin. So yes, you're going to have your job posting, but go one step further. Write that offer for the ideal person. Have it sitting on your desk. So when you come across and start interviewing and coming across the right people, the right potential right people for that position, you already have the offer in place. You can speak to that through this interviewing process. I hope that answers your question.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then what?
Yeah. So another thing you can do right now is start tracking your network, right? On an Excel spreadsheet, there's all kinds of CRMs out there where you can track, but maybe you're off the clock, you're at a, soccer game, your son or daughter's soccer game or some sort of event, you're meeting with somebody or talking with somebody who's standing next to you, and you strike up a conversation. Well, capture their information and put it into some sort of spreadsheet where you can cultivate that network. We all understand your network equals your net worth. It's not what you know, it's who you know, although what you know is extremely important as well. But you have to network. You have to have a process in place where you meet somebody, you can put them in and capture it. Every college coach, every professional coach in sports has what they call a recruiting board. Most Division I college coaches know who the best 7th, 8th, and 9th graders are in the country, and their names are on the board in their office. So for certain positions, they know the talent coming up. Most businesses don't have this, and I think they really should have this. So as a client candidate coming to an organization, I might just ask them, I just want to know how I can get on your top talent board. So you may not be hiring right now, but you may in the short term. I want to get on on your recruiting board, so to speak. How did I do that? How do I stay in touch? Who do I stay in touch with within your organization? Organizations need to be prepared for that. And so this is one thing they could do.
So how would I organize this spreadsheet so that it's not just a gobbledygook of names and we have to figure out what's going on?
Right. So you have an org chart in your business. So you have your number one people, your starting lineup right now, who are your current employees. Well, as you're reevaluating on a regular basis your results, your revenues, your top and bottom line, seeing where things need to be improved, well, you should have a matching second level, third level, fourth level of top talent that if something should happen, somebody leaves, somebody passes away, somebody retires, you don't have to go to this extensive job search. You already have an idea of the top talent that you'd like to consider for those positions. So you know the org chart of the current situation. Just start punching in names underneath that and track those individuals. Stay in touch with those individuals, just like we do on the client candidate side. We want to stay in touch with our network through LinkedIn and everything else. I believe organizations should start doing the same thing. And a lot of great companies do this. That's why they're great. That's why they don't seem to struggle finding talent. Top talent is always searching and always talking to top candidates. And so as a small to business, or even if you're somebody within a large organization, but you have to run a department, you should be cultivating your network of top talent, even if you're not hiring right now. And finally, yeah, have a streamlined process in place that when you do come across somebody, you can cultivate them. Great companies do this all the time, and you know this as well as I do, and your listeners know this too. Oftentimes, you may not even be looking for top talent, but you come across somebody or meet somebody that you feel like, oh my gosh, this person is fantastic. We need to create a position for them. You need to have a process in place with your organizations to cultivate that, to maintain that, to keep that. You don't want a top candidate coming to you, interacting with you, and because you can't keep or hold on to them, that they go to your competitor, right? So maybe one thing you could do is bring them on as a part-time consultant until you can figure out how to bring them on full time. Doing part-time consulting on both sides of the table is fantastic. We ask our client candidates who are in the job search for a little longer than they want to start doing consulting. Put that onto your resume, onto your documentation that you're doing consulting. Same thing on the decision maker side. They can do the same thing. They can bring somebody on part-time, do some consulting work. This gives them a chance to vet each other and have a chance to look at each other's work, how they fit, and it's a fantastic way to see if somebody's going to be a good fit for your organization. But it's also a great way to figure out how to capture and keep top talent when you do come across them.
Okay, so I have a question. I was in a meeting yesterday with someone, and the question was, with this methodology, is it going to work for nonprofits? And even if it works for nonprofits, what if they don't have the ability or the money to hire at this point in time, but they like the talent they found?
Yeah, so it goes back to what we were just talking about. Maybe doing some sort of consulting gig, bringing them on part-time, getting them involved and somehow engaging with that uh, client candidate. Maybe it's ancillary to the actual company or job position. Just staying in touch, keeping them in the loop, bringing them in, getting them engaged. Maybe going to some of the social functions or um, being involved in some of the other things that organization is doing. But the best way that I've found, Cynthia, is just seeing if we can get them on some sort of consulting project, even if it's small or short, just to get them involved and keep them engaged in that manner. There's a big movement right now in doing philanthropy and doing volunteer work. And when you come across somebody that you think is fantastic, get them involved. See if they'll come in and be part of whatever event that you might have coming up. But again, the consulting side is fantastic.
Thank you. So I want to open it up to anyone else who has a quick question. I do have others that came through email. Again, if you want to ask a question, down on the lower left-hand side, the ribbon that runs along the bottom, click on the microphone with the red slash and ask away. I'll wait a few seconds.
Well, again, I've gone really fast here because I know we're short on time, but it's so dynamic. This both sides of the table. I mean, both when you sit down and talk to HR directors, decision makers, owners of small businesses and whatnot, they're always saying, "Oh, I can't find good help. I can't get good talent coming my way. How do I do that?" And job seekers say, "Oh my gosh, I have so much talent, but I just can't get through the HR clog, right? The resumes and the postings, and they've already been filled, or I feel like I'm just a number to fill their quotas for interviews and resumes." But if we can step outside of that, look at it from a different perspective, maybe do some things a little bit unconventional right now that will maybe one day be the conventional way of going about it, maybe we can quickly bridge this gap between decision makers and top quality candidates. And some of the things we've talked about today hopefully can make sense, and you can start implementing some of these strategies sooner than later.
Perfect. Well, I do want to squeeze in one other question before we go on. I had a question about what is the number one most important thing during negotiations, because that seems to be where a lot of things fall apart again.
Well, as we saw, that's a great question, by the way. And as we talked about earlier, during the interview processes, really gives an organization a chance to vet and really kind of dive in deep to the potential candidate. And I always tell our client candidates that in the negotiation phase is really for you to kind of really push and see if this organization is who they are and what they stand for and their belief systems and all that. And what I mean by that is oftentimes usually in bigger corporations or organizations, but oftentimes when you come down the negotiation phase, you've gone through this whole process to find the right person, and you finally get them, and they want to finalize the offer. The candidate wants to finalize the offer with the organization. And what happens is, because the organization, maybe they're not as confident with negotiating or whatnot, they'll set the meeting up, but then they'll send a junior person to the negotiating meeting. And I always say that's kind of a red flag for me, right? If the organization can't send the decision maker to the finalizing meeting or the negotiating meeting of the offer, that to me is a little bit of a red flag. And so one thing I would say to organizations is, when you have somebody who you feel is fantastic for your organization, and they want to negotiate and talk about the offer and finalize it and get to the details, make sure the decision maker is there to finalize that offer. It's one of the worst turnoffs a client candidate can have. And I tell my candidates all the time, if they start playing games with your offer at that stage of the game, you still have the ability to say thank you, but no thank you. This may not be the right thing for me. Because that really demonstrates, it gives a lot of inside scoop to who that organization is if they don't send a decision maker to the negotiating table. So that's my biggest thing that I would suggest, is make sure you've done all the work. Don't mess it up right at the end of the process and send a junior person, somebody who can't make decisions when in that finalizing meeting. Great question.
Thank you. Okay, so let's go on. Now that you've set the table for us, you've brought in the correct candidate. Well, there's still a bunch of stuff that we have to do in order to get there. So let me put my picture back on so you can see me, or I can see me. The question I get is, great, once we start to understand more about what's being looked for, well, I'm doing all this work up front. How does it actually pay off long term for our company? Yes, I get the talent, but what else is it going to do? Because the hiring's way over here. And if I'm doing all this work and spending all this time focusing way over here, my business is doing something different. So how in the world can we make this work in closer collaboration with all the other things that we have to do in our business? And that's where I'm going to take us next, into some of the processes and the operational work that you're going to want to do, specifically about innovating the way you do job postings, because we do want to make a good first impression. And as people who are interviewing, the employers who are interviewing people for positions, well, it doesn't take too many interviews before you can figure out who really knows their stuff and who's just giving you a bunch of fluff. Well, the same thing goes on the opposite side. If we just put in the canned stuff in who we are, we're the world class. Well, if you're a small business, you can be world class, but I see a lot of we're the leaders in. As a small business, you're not a leader in anything, maybe in your little region, but you have to be realistic because people start to discredit you when you make claims that really can't be supported by reasonable logic. And there's simple things to do. Now, you've got so many great things about your business, you don't have to go and stretch and put in the fluff. And the great thing about eliminating the fluff is when you start putting in the exact stuff that you do, who you really are. And as Dominic said, you start to capture those values and you can embed them right here. That means that now they actually see who it is that you are, and the right talent starts to come to you to talk to you. You don't need as much automation because you're doing it right here. You're filtering from the very beginning. So you need to get the real requirements. You need to talk about the real you. You're going to use it as a first filter, and then we'll talk a little bit about expanding it back into your company, specifically the career paths. Because millennials and Gen Zs, if you can't talk career path, then they're not going to even bother continuing the interview session or the interview segments that you have lined up for them, no matter how good they are. And in fact, I've talked with clients who have had millennials and Gen Zs come in, and they're fantastic. They give them an offer. And because they can't talk about career paths and the purpose of the company, in other words, that value that you're bringing, they walk, no matter how good the job offer is, no matter how good the money is. They're looking for more. So how do we start to tell them that we have more from the very beginning? Well, we do that by innovating our job postings, as we said, and stating what we really need, but we don't just do that haphazardly. We actually have a plan, and this is where the difference starts to show up. And I'm going to go through this little flow chart because you'll see that this is different than most companies start to use when they try to do hiring. Typically, what I see in hiring is everyone sits around a big conference table and says, well, what do we need for this job? Or one person sits at their desk and does the same thing. And they start writing down first the requirements, but then, oh, wouldn't it be great if we had this? Oh, and they can do that. Oh, and pretty soon you have this big long list of stuff that Superman couldn't even match. So, what is it that we really have to focus on? Well, we're going to have some sort of objective metrics that show that we actually need this person, and it's going to fit into our strategy. And if it does neither of those things, then why are we even opening up the posting? This is where we start to develop the requirements for our new hire and the need for our new hire, which allows us to then start developing that job description, or, and I should say, as well, the job offering that we're going to have sitting on our desk as we start to talk to the candidates and compare them. Can they talk to what it is that I'm looking for? Because that gets captured in both of these documents. When we talk about skills, we're going to talk about what is not just wanted, but actually needed, because research has shown that various groups, such as women, will self disqualify if they see that there are too many requirements that they haven't met. And if we're just putting down wants as requirements, then we're losing out on gaining a lot of talent. They won't even come and see us. They won't even submit the resume if we're still doing that, or come to talk to us because they just feel they can't meet all of those requirements. We want to make sure that we've got two sections, one for requirements, one for, hey, and by the way, if you have this, this would be great, but it's not a requirement. We want the same with experience. Everyone wants experienced people because they get on the job faster. But do you need experience as much as you need the ability to be agile and learn fast? Because if the job requires agility and fast learning, then experience may be enough if you've just been through school but don't have any on the job experience. So, what is it that you really need? Once we make that list, we're going to then go down and compare that against our culture, against the strategy, and against the initiatives that we have going on. Because If what we've written doesn't really fit into our culture, we're saying that we want someone who can move fast and dynamically make decisions on the spot, and yet we're a company that requires 7 levels of signatures before any decision is made. That's a mismatch, and you're going to hire someone in who's going to leave in 6 months. Does it match our strategy? Again, are we fast moving or are we very methodical in how we go about? Those are two different sets of people that we're talking to. So you're going to adjust as necessary to make sure that you're really asking for someone who's going to fit into our organization. And I talked with the CEO recently who said it used to be skill sets that were always looked for, but now fit is that much more important because if you can't get the right fit, it doesn't matter the skill sets, you're not going to be able to survive or want to stay with the company that just hired you. Now you're finally ready to create the job posting, which is where most people usually start. You're going to start putting in there some overviews of the job. You don't want them wasting time in an interview where you're trying to figure out, are they truly going to fit in here with us? Can they truly do what they say? If you also or if you first have to go back and explain what the job is from the beginning and explain what it is you're going to be expecting, a lot of that stuff we can take care of. And we're going to start taking care of it right now. And that's going back to those requirements. When I was in New York rather recently, I had someone come up just before a presentation I was about to make and say, I'm really interested in the data analysis segment. I don't know what it means for today's world because so much technology has come into it. I need to learn more. And the person next to me was from a university and said, hey, what you need to do is sign up for our certification program in data analysis. And in it, you're going to learn Python. And you need to learn Python and a few other advanced languages. These are computer languages. And my reply was, but you need more than that. And in fact, the language is not as important as understanding the advanced statistics behind it because all the programming does is gather the data and put it through one of these statistical models. Now, these advanced statistical models just needed so much data, we could never use them before. But those are the pieces now that are running part of our AI and other things that are pulling and organizing data that now, if you don't understand the stat, you don't know why certain data was put in or what data must be put in order to get realistic results for your business. So you have to know the requirements. In order to get the right ones, you want to sit down with a diverse team, or at least put all of the requirements through a diverse group of people who say, no, this really isn't it. You want them to poke holes in it now before you go and hire a programmer to do your advanced data analysis, and before you hire a data analyst to do your advanced programming. You want to, in that image part, tell them what you're doing and the needed fit, as well as start to develop the image that you want. I'm going to be using a job posting that we created a couple years ago for a client of mine, and they are in the luxury home services area. Now, this may be a luxury home for some people. It is perfect with this time of year. If you're listening to this webinar on a recording, we're currently just before Halloween. And while this is a cute picture, it may not present the image that you really want. So until they know you and perhaps have signed up for your newsletter, you want to make sure that the image going out is always the one that you want to present. So this is a luxury home that's going to need certain amounts of care from the outside. The first sentence, and we're going to go through these various sentences to show you exactly what it is they're doing to start to orient and start to filter who it is that's coming through. So it started with, to reinvent the home service business, you have to build the best team. And right there, they're telling you, what is it that we do? We're not using nice marketing terms. We're just telling you straight out, we're in the home service business. And if you want to be in a tech company, you're not going to go after this job. If you don't like working in a team, if you want to be that individual contributor who can sit alone at a desk, then you're not going to want to go after this job. So the words that you place in here are your filters. Join and then the company name if you want to help us grow the business. Not everyone likes to grow businesses. A lot of people like stable businesses where they come in and they know their job every single day. Well, growing means that things are going to be changing. It's not stable, and that's very uncomfortable for some people. So again, you filtered out the people that aren't going to fit in here, no matter how well they've performed in home service businesses before. They'll talk about by improving the customer experience of luxury homeowners through the innovation of interior and exterior home services. So right there, this is the type of work that we're doing. We're innovating for one, and we're doing both interior and exterior home services. We want to talk with them about what they're going to walk into job-wise and why. We can do all of this in the job postings, which leads to richer questioning during the whole interview process. The services we provide are absolutely essential to busy executives and their families. We're telling them who the customer base is and the value that we provide. And if that's not the value that you want to provide or a company that you want to work with because of the value you want to work toward is different, you know it now. We, meaning the business that's putting in this posting, we recently purchased two new businesses and are in the process of melding them together to heighten performance, innovate service industries, and digitize our infrastructure. Right there, they're telling you what you're walking into. You know that you're going to be part of this team. You're going to be involved in all of this stuff. And if this scares you, not nervous scaring as in, you know what, this would be pretty fun, but I don't know what they want. I'm hoping that I can fit. But the no way do I ever want to deal with this sort of stuff. You're filtering right now. They're not going to come and talk to you. These pieces will provide our customers with convenience and superior interior and exterior home services, resulting in trusting relationships and increased business growth. So right there, we're not just doing the job, we're also helping to develop the customer relationships. That's the expectation. We're giving superior service because we're building these relationships. Again, if you don't want to meet that expectation, that's fine. It's no problem. You're going to go look at a different job. What will they be evaluated on? Give them some insight so that they can ask the questions. You're going to be working in and on the business. So now we're talking about where they're going to work, and we're going to start talking about what type. In the beginning, the majority of your time will be spent doing the job. In other words, hands-on field work. If you want to sit at a desk, don't apply for this job because we want you to know what it takes out in the field for us to deliver that superior service. Then you're going to come back in and help build the business. If you're only the hands-on person who never wants to look at a desk job or do any of the process building, this right here is going to cut you out because you're looking at strategic and tactical planning. As such, you will be a member of the leadership team as well as a service team. Ooh, now I'm wearing a bunch of different hats. Do I want to wear all those hats? Specifically, do I want to start leading perhaps people, perhaps starting to design the processes and the initiatives that are going to be put in place? You will be expected not only to work to help with the work, but to bring in ideas, implement new service offerings, and help develop the business structure. Working on the business may include, and then they list some of the highlights of things they really want the people to be involved with. Again, a very nice filter. Plus, not just what we've been doing all the time, but we're looking at the innovation of the piece. So as they continue on, as your tenure with us increases and your performance shows continued willingness to develop us, the company, well, it's our advancement is not just about us anymore. They've now told us that you have to do something to show that you're advancing as well as advance the business at the same time. That's a bigger ask. You have to be willing to build both. You will have opportunities to transition more time into the strategic aspects of the business. Uh-oh. So now I'm going from the hands off inside of the business more. I'm going to be working on the business instead of just in the business the longer I stay and the more I help the business. If I don't like that, I need to reconsider going after this type of job. At the same time, I know what it takes to advance in this job. So now I can ask real questions about what is it that you're specifically looking for? How do you want that performance to look? How long is it going to take? Whatever it is that you really want to talk about in that interview to start to figure out if both sides are going to fit. If you're someone who's willing to do all the different types of work, an entrepreneur, so early stage, not stable, big business, if you're willing to do the work that they must do to build a successful business, including hands-on home service work, we want you to join us as and then the company name and a professional of ours. So we're extending the offer here, but this is what it takes to actually come in. And if you don't think you're going to be able to make it through this gauntlet, then perhaps there's a different job for you. Enough people will be attracted to this that they're going to get highly qualified people coming in just from the job posting itself. Great, you've got the person, you did the interviewing, you had all of these wonderful people, and it may not be hundreds, it may only be 10, but they're all targeted to exactly what you want. So now the tough decision is, when I make my decision on who to keep, how do I keep them? What's the next step that I need to do to make sure I've got processes in place? And that's all about building the career ladders. We're going to use the posting to start. You did all of this work to figure out what the company was, what you wanted, what the value was they're going to bring, how they're going to advance. Now we're just going to put the final touches on it. And we're actually going to figure out, well, what would the next jobs be? Where do we want them to go next in their career choices? Because we've already set them up with the hands-on piece or the strategic pieces that they've been working on. We're going to capture those requirements. And yes, there are skill sets that you must have. If you have to have a certification, then we're going to note it in there so that when these people come on, they know what it takes to get to the next position when in 6 months they feel they've mastered this position and they want to start to move. You don't want them leaving the company. They're too valuable to you now. So tell them what it takes and tell them what the type of performance is that they're going to be expected. When we first looked at that job posting, there was a lot of hands-on work. If the next job is more computer work, you need to let them know and what type of skills for that computer work are necessary. So here, not only are you creating the job ladder or the career ladder that keeps people excited, but you're starting to see what it takes to also sustain the business. And this is a very real need in small and mid-sized businesses as well as large, but large companies often have that succession planning done. This is going to help you march through that and start to determine who's going to go where so that we can prep them and always have someone ready for that job. So similar to the job board that Dominic talked about, but now they're in your company and you're starting to put them on the job board for advancement throughout the company. So I'm going to open it up to any questions that you may have. And Dominic, I went through that pretty quickly, but are there any pieces that you would like to add to it?
No, but I think it's really interesting how your model, your vertical model, kind of matches the job creation model that I showed earlier in that action planning. So you really have taken the action step of whatever the change or whatever the organization is going through, and really put that the information behind the action on in the job creation model. So I thought it fit really nicely. And going into the nuances of identifying the posting and the reasons behind it is fantastic. And being able to share with a client candidate the progression of where, you know, you're here now, but this is where we see you go, and this is how we see you getting there, because you want to keep and maintain that top talent like you were talking about. And so by laying out a succession plan, a career ladder, a path, even if it's outside the candidate's current skill set, but you're saying, listen, we're going to help you get there. We're going to help you get the certifications. We're going to help you as you're delivering results in your current state. We also want you to be thinking about what's next for you here at XYZ company. I think it's fantastic. Well done. I just love it, and I love how you presented it. And I think it's such a value add to organizations. And we can get more organizations to jump on board with this type of thinking, this type of model. Man, we can change the world. We can. And I think it's fantastic. So well done. Great job. No question. Just wanted to make a statement. I think it's fantastic.
Well, thank you. But I do have to put it back to our viewers because they're the ones who are going to change the world. And what we're asking is that we want to know how you use these methods and the processes that we presented and the type of success that you've had to them. So let me continue on so that we can go through to the end and you know how to contact us. Because knowing that someone's had success with what we're showing you, that's what excites us. Dominic has been generous enough to provide us with a thank you. It's a 30-minute discovery call where you can start to talk through these things even before you've gone out and generated that success that I know waits you. If you contact him at dominicm@jobsearchgurus.com, as the person who's doing the employer side of trying to find the talent, he can help guide you through what they're going to be looking for and the piece then that you're going to want to put in place and some of the components that that piece may have. So you want to come with your question ready, but a very generous offer. I am also providing a 30-minute strategic success private, I still can't say that together. I'm going to have to change those words. A private workshop, but this is all about your success because once you start to embed it inside of the business, in the processes that you do, you want to make sure it's aligned to the strategy, to the initiatives, to the culture that you're trying to create. If you don't, there's a mismatch. Everyone knows it, and people start to get a little itchy to start to leave because they don't feel that the business is authentic. And I know that that's not the type of feeling that you want to create inside of your employee ranks. Let me help you uncover where the little pieces that we can switch and will get you on track and your employees fully engaged as you move forward with all of this. Just email me at success@processstrategysolutions.com. I want to thank you for attending, and I want to thank Dominic for coming in and sharing his brand new mindset as well as how to go about finding that hidden job market. And for now, all of you who have the companies, you now know that the, m- the majority of people, the millennials and Gen Zers who are making up the bulk of who's looking for jobs, they are using the hidden job market. They've been doing it in an ad hoc sort of way. Dominic has put some parameters and organization around it, but unless you understand this, you're not going to be able to attract them. So do take advantage of his 30-minute offer, and I'll see you in our next webinar. Thank you.
Thanks. That was great.
You're welcome. I'm trying to find the stop here. Here we go. Goodbye.
Yeah, thanks.